Hi, you've reached Jeff Pulliam, and you are watching Video Blast number 11, Work Breakdown Structure, where today we're going to be talking about activities. So let's get started. As you know from prior Video Blasts, one of the subject matter items that we've talked about in terms of project development has been Frankenstein. And as you know, with Frankenstein, we were able to subject our project to it being broken out to the summary tasks, which were the limbs, the torso, and the head. And as you know, we had some fun with that, and from the limbs we were able then to develop work packages of legs and arms, and with the torso we were able to identify some vital organs that are part of that torso, which were the heart and the lungs. And of course we had to include the all important head, which of course we identified and made sure that we had captured the very most important work packages of the brain, the eyes, and the ears. Now we do have fun with this, and it all is in jest, but the idea is when we are looking at work breakdown structure, we really are, and I put some thought to this, we really are talking about parts. And so for example, the limbs would be a part, the torso would be another part, and you could basically say a third part would be the head. And so with parts, well, it's easy enough to say that if these are three large parts, that these parts then would be made of further parts, which we would call subparts. And so in this particular instance, I'm calling them some parts A and subpart B, subpart C, and subpart D. In fact, with the brain, eyes, and ears, those are subparts E, F, and G. The idea being here, of course, is that we can name anything here within our work breakdown structure of any title, whether it be a summary task or whether it be a part or whether the work package is a subpart. The idea is you can call it whatever you want. It's just important to know that component parts that are underneath a particular part are going to be the composition of that part above it. And so it's just important to understand that the decomposition, as you see in the organizational chart, that those sub-tier parts support the above tier parts, and that when combined they make up that part. And so further along with the activities, we could call them mini parts. Mini parts being the activities that, when these mini parts are put together, complete the work package, or in this case, which we're calling subpart A. And so you can see then, going from left to right, that the mini parts then are all the activities that make up the work packages above them, or what we are calling the subparts. And so it's just important to know that you can call it whatever you want. Just understand the fact that through a work breakdown structure, you're decomposing work. You're decomposing work into parts, and these parts, when put together, very similar to if you were building a Lego toy, that these parts when put together will create a deliverable and will create something that is whole and in part what is going to be your project. So as we further continue along, I wanted to talk about Frankenstein, and specifically I wanted to focus on activities tonight. And as you can see from the diagram, we're talking about the head part, or the head summary task, that is made up of work packages, that is the brain, that is the eyes, and of the ears. And as you can see, I've listed activity 9 as being list brain criteria needs. Activity 10, to source and acquire brain. Further to the eyes, we are determining the eye type and sources. When I say sources, we're talking about where to go to acquire the eye part. And then of course, activity number 12, I've got select eye doctor. And further, activity 13 for the ears is identify and list ear shape and hearing criteria. And activity 14, which is identify sources and acquire ears. Again, when I say sources, that is to identify those subjects, those places where you can actually acquire these parts. So what I wanted us to focus on is when you look at these activities, I've gotten them to a point where we're actually doing something. And from that doing, we come up with an end result, with that being a quote unquote deliverable. Of course, you're hearing that word often now in project management, particularly in these studies, because that's what we do, is we need to deliver something. There's no ambiguity of that. It's very black and white. So when you look at activities, when you start to draw up your activities, make sure that you list them briefly, but that there is an action with that activity that delivers something. So on our next slide, what I wanted to show is that, for example, in activity 9, you can see here that we're going to be speaking about the brain. In activity 9, we support the brain and we give it more detail when we talk about the activity. So what I'm expressing here is what we would call the work breakdown structure definition. That is, we're going to speak as close and specifically as we can to what it is we're going to actually be doing. And so in this particular case, you can see with activity 9 that we are going to get together with the team, that we're going to do the action of brainstorming, and that from this action of brainstorming, we're going to list the brain type needs. That is, do we seek a scientist type brain, or do we look for a brain that is from a doctor, or a brain that's from a tradesperson like a carpenter? That's the type of criteria that we're trying to develop through these actions, this activeness, if you will, that is going to support what it is eventually that is the brain work package. So then we continue with the discussion here. So we will distill and identify those top 3 brain choices that are very important to determining the brain that we want to select. And of course, when we have all that information, that is when we're developing these requirements, if you will, we're going to record it into an official document. And so this is the idea when we speak to acquiring information as it relates to the activities at the area of what we want to discuss, which is these actions that support the work package. So as you can see further to activity 10, I'm identifying with specifics what it is that we are going to be doing. And further to the end, you can see with the I's, I identify and define activity 11 and 12, and the same and such with activity 13 and of course activity 14. The idea is this, is that when we get down to the activity level, when we go from a large part to a sub part to a mini part, when we go from summary task to work package to activities, that when combined, these activities, this is where, as I've said, the rubber hits the road. This is where action is happening, and this is where items and things are made that become the work that supports that work package. It is here that we need to define the activity, and it's from this level too as well that we can baseline and begin to work on the RACI matrix and the responsibility assignment matrix. It's going to speak to all of the different component players, if you will, that are going to be involved in creating these activities. So that is the VIBL Blast number 11 for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please review and study these slides carefully, as I believe they will help you in determining the definitions that are going to be those activities that moving forward will begin to create and to develop and to support the work packages, which are the very important piece of the work breakdown structure. Have a great evening, and we will speak to you soon.